Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. Today is Thursday. Today's Thursday, not yesterday, Joe. It's July 16th, 2026, and I am your host, Joe Bakanovic, and this is Conspiracy Theory Thursday, which is the Road to Concord's version of the day in school when they brought in the film projector. Now, a lot of you are probably too young to understand. Maybe they wheeled in the VCR and the TV. I don't know how they do that nowadays, but back in my day, when they brought in the film projector, it was going to be fun. You're either going to watch a movie or you're going to tease the teacher about not being able to load and keep the film working properly. Either way, it meant you weren't doing class that day. So we're doing class, but not doing class. So movie day. By the way, in the second half hour of today's show, we will demonstrate what I mean by, hey, Charlie, we haven't had a strike in a while. So anyhow, today's class, Conspiracy Theory Thursday, Schrödinger's senator. Yes, it's time to talk about Mitch McConnell. But before we get to that, I got to explain to those of us who don't know what Schrödinger's cat is. Most of us should know, but Schrödinger's cat is a thought experiment that illustrates the quantum superposition principle. A system can exist in multiple states at once. Actually, no, it can't. But it tries to explain that. Anyway, the thought experiment is you put a poor little kitty cat in a box with a radioactive material that has a 50% chance of decay in 1 hour. So you got a 50-50 chance that the material will decay in 1 hour. And you have a Geiger counter in there and it's set to a poison gas. And if the Geiger counter detects the decay, it releases the gas and kills the cat. So you're supposed to decide, is the cat alive or dead? So according to Schrödinger, it's both at the same time. But according to simple logic, no, it isn't. Even in quantum physics, where they say it has to be both things at one time, no, it doesn't. That's in the definition of is. So maybe somebody should take and explain that to the quantum physicists. Your idea has a problem. But anyhow, whatever. We're going to take that. Comment on the board from Natasha. Holy animal abuse, Batman. So do we have a dead senator or not? I guess that's supposed to be our question. And that brings us to this picture. Now, I've already put a couple of the videos that I ran across, stumbled upon, up on our Signal chat. So I'm not going to share them with anybody here, but there have been a group of people questioning this picture. Some folks claim that this picture comes from a while back, the past. It's not a recent picture, that they're reusing it, trying to gaslight us. I have ran across the most The most interesting evaluation that I ran across is a gentleman who has expertise in body language. He reads body language and he does counseling, psychiatry, and stuff. And he's looking at the picture and he's like, well, he's not questioning the picture itself. He said he put it through an AI filter and it came back as being a real picture, no indication of AI, which this here, they're trying to claim that the area under his finger here is an artifact of an AI generated picture. I don't think so, but maybe. I don't know. But the gentleman who was watching the body language, he's pointing out that the way Mitch is holding that paper is very unusual. Is saying that it could be that that's the best he can do. That's as good as he can do to hold that newspaper up. And he's saying that his view of this is Mitch McConnell, since he's not standing, sitting down, he's probably not strong enough to stand. And she's holding him in place. So he thinks that if this picture's what it claims to be, we have a man who's much sicker than they're letting on. There are other people who believe that McConnell is either dead or incapacitated, as in on life support. I don't know. To be honest with you, this is one that hasn't really caught my attention very much. I don't care anymore. I really don't. I know I've seen some of the conspiracy theories going on now that Lindsey Graham died in Ukraine, got blown up in a drone attack. So they had to pretend like he died of a heart attack when he got back here. I can't wholeheartedly go with that one because too many people saw him alive before he died that day. But now it did make me wonder, supposedly of a heart attack, or at least that's what seems to be what happened to Lindsey Graham. It makes me wonder about other things that have been questionable deaths, like Andrew Breitbart and Justice Scalia and a couple of others that have died in rather questionable circumstances. And that brought me to thinking, okay, Mitch is a no big deal to me. That's not, if he is dead, they're just keeping him alive. I almost called this one weekend at Mitch's house, weekend at Bernie's house or whatever, where you prop up the dead man. Because they've got a special election going on. So what they're trying to do is make sure they hold on to that seat. Now I can see that, but The one thing I do want to bring up, since it is Conspiracy Theory Thursday, is this. I've mentioned this before. Most people laugh it off. This is from military.com. The CIA's heart attack gun, a Cold War weapon for targeted assassinations. That's a real thing, folks. Back in the 1970s, it was a real thing. And that's not Photoshop. That's an actual picture of when they were doing the investigations back there in Congress. And what this does is it shoots a little pellet, and they can shoot it up to 100 yards. And it mimics the effects of a heart attack. Doesn't leave much trace unless you know what you're looking for. In an autopsy, you won't catch it. You have to test specifically for that toxin. And all it'll leave is a little hole in the body. And if everybody's thinking heart attack, it might get missed. But yes, this is a real thing. And it was speculated back in when Andrew Breitbart died that might have been what was used on Andrew was the heart attack gun, because he was ticking off all the right people. So that pretty much, that's my Schrödinger senator conspiracy theory, but it did get me to reading a few others, and I ran across a question. And the question was simple. Who coordinated all of the sudden immigration into Europe, especially mostly from Muslim countries? Because they all, if you go do some deep diving, you'll find that Europe opened its borders all at about the same time, right around the time of the Arab Spring. Now, if you try to research this, good luck. You're gonna have a hard time finding this. But the Arab Spring was coordinated in part with Barack Obama and the United States deep state. That was intentional. That wasn't grassroots like they tried to make it out to be. That was a artificially manipulated thing. And at that time, they started immigrating everybody into Europe and into the United States, all the Muslims. So what that does is give you the excuse to rile everybody up and, oh, look, all these people are leaving. They're dreamers. They just want a safe place to live and blah, blah, blah. Let's import them to Europe and the United States. That, when you look at it on its surface, you could dismiss that as a coincidence. You could. I don't. Because right after all of that, or shortly after that, we get hit with two other things that come back to back. You got hit with the stolen elections in 2020. Well, COVID first. You get hit with COVID and the lockdowns and the jabs. And if you're paying attention to those show clear signs of coordination. And then you get hit with the January 6th supposed insurrection, which has now been debunked, especially with the release of all the body cam video from the police. If you look into that now, you'll see that was not an insurrection. There were 200 and something government agents in the crowd instigating things, and there's video of the crowd telling the uniformed officers that they're government agents. And yeah, no, that's not what it was supposed to. So that's the steal. That was a coordination of the steal. And all these mail-in ballots and the drop boxes and everything else that just popped up all of a sudden. That all got done. And then there's a coordination between the government and social media to defeat any investigation or serious looking into this. I think what we've lived through in the last 10 to 15 years was the Great Reset. I firmly believe this. And I think what this is all part of is moving toward there. And all of that, you can question that. You can say, well, I don't know, Joe. But I think it's all pushing us toward the Agenda 2030 or whatever, 2034. They got to keep moving it because they're not getting there fast enough. And everybody's like, yeah, right. That's another conspiracy theory. Well, no, not in this case. The moving you toward the Agenda 30, 34, whatever it is now, in the smart cities, that is coordinated through the UN. And if you've been with this show from the beginning, you'll remember that I have published the papers from the UN telling you exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And if you've read through that stuff on the UN, you will see that that's exactly what they're doing. They're following their game plan. It's just taking them longer than they expected it to take. Why? Because the United States Constitution is in the way. The United States is in the way. And the United States Constitution keeps the United States in play. It is a harder thing to destroy than people realize. The way it was constructed is absolute genius. And it's taking them longer to erode and destroy it than they expected it to. And in recent times, in the last couple of weeks, actually, I've been running across video on YouTube and other places of the movers and shakers saying the same thing that I've been saying for a while. I just ran across a video of Tulsi Gabbard saying that one of the things that shocked her is that she found out that these people, the proverbial they, think that they're smarter than us and that they want to be gods. Where have you heard anybody say that before? Right here. I've been saying that for almost 2 decades now. So Tulsi was explaining that, and I'm going to share that video with you, maybe even Monday. And I've seen Steve Deace questioning whether or not Mitch McConnell's still alive. He's really on to the election, the election theft. And that's what it was. It was theft of an election. But what I'm wondering about is, why doesn't anybody ever go to jail? Why is everything that was done under Biden still legal? Now, there's a lot of talk about how that's what Trump's going to do tonight. He's going to declare a state of emergency and blah, blah, blah about the elections. Now, I could see that. I could see that happening. I'm not expecting it, but I could see that happening because the Democrats have been telling us, oh, he's gonna lock down, he's gonna declare an emergency, he's gonna lock down the elections, he's gonna steal the elections. That's predictive programming. They're trying to get you ready for it. So when he does something that, in all honesty, would be legal, you're gonna think it's illegal. So they're pushing for a civil war, an open civil war. And they're pushing us in that direction hard. The Democratic Socialists are out now with, oh boy, all sorts of stuff that you know what? Let's not wait till the next tap. Let's just get into this now. I need to share this with you. This is Conspiracy Theory Thursday, but it's also a big I told you so. We've done these shows already early on in our history, first year and a half. I'm seeing them come to play right now. It's playing out. So the things that I was talking about just 4 years ago, it's happening. I've been talking about this since at least 2010. But okay, so start with this thing. It's called the Long March Through the Institutions. This is Wikipedia. I don't give a rat's rip about all the little details. But basically, it's a slogan by a German socialist student activist, Rudi Deutschke, started around 1967. It's describing the strategy to create radical change in government, particularly in his case, West Germany, by becoming part of it. The phrase Long March is referenced to the physical Long March of the Chinese Communist Army. But now here's the thing. He didn't come up with this. Woodrow Wilson did. Woodrow freaking Wilson. We'll get to that in a minute. But the thing I get a kick out of is down here. It says, the Long March Through the Institutions has been invoked by American right-wing commentators as an explanation for the dominance of left-wing thought in academia and government as social justice activists active in the 60s and 70s dispersed throughout various centers of power. Well, that's exactly what they did do. But the way this article's written, it's like, well, the right's just crazy. Really? Okay. This is from one of our shows. This is an article I posted. This goes back to March 23rd, 2025. But I've been on this even longer. And the deep state is not a myth. It's not a conspiracy theory. It comes from Woodrow Wilson's speech, What is Progress, 1913. And down here, he flat out tells us, if you'll remember, for those of you who have never heard this before, I'm going to read it. For those of you who have, bear with me. It's worth remembering. Now, in here, the reddish brown, that's me adding an explanation here. I am translating progressive for you. You say, well, Joe, you're just going to put words in his mouth. No, I'm not. No, if you've been with us a length of time, you know that this is exactly what Wilson's saying. I've read a lot of his work. You're either going to trust me or you're not. If you don't trust me, go back and go through the shows that we've done on Woodrow freaking Wilson. Says, well, he writes, he says, well, we are architects in our time. He means revolutionaries. And our architects are also engineers. They think they're scientists. They're actually socialists, but they think of themselves as scientists. We don't have to stop using a railroad terminal because a new station is being built. We don't have to stop using the current government system while we build a new one within it. That's what he means. We don't have to stop any of the processes of our lives because we are rearranging the structures in which we conduct those processes. What he means is they can keep using the current system while they'll infiltrate and subvert it from within. If you think I'm wrong, pay attention. He's going to tell you I'm right before this paragraph's over. What we have to undertake is to systematize the foundations of the House, subvert the foundations of the Constitution, no longer elect the senators directly instead of letting the states do it, change the presidency to direct election instead of letting the electoral Congress do it the way it was originally supposed to do it. You're changing the structure of the Constitution. And they did this. The progressives did this. So they're changing that. So what we have to undertake is to systematize the foundations of the House, subvert the foundations of the Constitution, then to thread all the old parts of the structure with the steel, which will be laced together in modern fashion, replace the Constitution with bureaucracies and direct democracy, accommodated to all the modern knowledge of structural strength and elasticity. He says, adopt it to the socialist paradigm without letting the voters know what we are doing. That's exactly what he means. And then slowly change the partitions. In other words, subvert by small steps, aka progressive steps, what Maximilian called incrementalism, the slow march, the long march. And there will be the family in a great building whose noble architecture will at last be disclosed. In other words, you did it in secret. So the people will have this new government. The revolution will be complete and the deep state revealed. He says, where men can live as a single community, the collective ideal by whatever name. So that's communism right there, folks. Cooperative as in perfected, coordinated beehive. Man perfected this community. Man created utopia on earth. In other words, man is God. And I quote here, meaning Wilson believes he and his architects will transform human nature through government. They think they're gods. And then he says, not afraid of any storm of nature. This is his new community. Not afraid of any artificial storm or any imitation of thunder and lightning, knowing that the foundations go to the bedrock of principle and knowing that whenever they please, they can change that plan again and accommodate it as they please to alter necessities of their lives. In short, believing man will have shown himself to be God, their works, not mine. This is from What is Progress, 1913. Now, if you think or you have a hard time believing that people think this way, you just need to go back and read the progressives. We have shown you where John Dewey said he would use the public education system to create the perfect citizen for this new world that Wilson was building. He said where man is God and the teacher is going to be the prophet of the new religion. He said that, man as God. And he said he's going to use the school system to teach children to conform, not to think for themselves, not to question. He says it in a way that makes it sound like he wants the child to think for themselves. It's not what he wants. He wants you to think you are thinking for yourself. In other words, he's going to program you. Well, we've done a show on John Dewey and William Ayres, who finished what John Dewey started. You know it as Common Core. Now look at our school systems today. Look at what we're putting out, both at the public education and university level. These people can't read, but they sure know that there are 550 gazillion genders in the world that can be changed at the flip of a desire. They know that. They know all about essential oils, but they don't know about history. But they do know that the United States was founded by a bunch of rich, white, racist slave owners. That's not true. There were a few of them there, not a whole bunch of them. Oh, yeah, and they were deists and atheists. That's definitely not true. The school system has destroyed at least one generation, if not two. Exactly, and they've produced people who are cult members. That's why they auto-protect. If you try to educate them, they'll attack you, verbally and or physically. They've been taught to protect their programming, protect the beehive that Dewey built for Wilson. And it's at the college level now as well. These are the Karens that you see. This was produced on purpose. This was intentional. Now we're going to keep going. Gateway Pundit. It says, terrifying. Far left Democratic Socialists unveil radical plan to abolish the Senate, replace the president and Supreme Court, grant mass amnesty, and overthrow the U.S. Constitution. Folks, okay, in all seriousness, you're not supposed to be running for office if that is your stated purpose. You're supposed to be in jail. There is nothing in our Constitution that allows for you to be elected as an overthrow of the country. If you want to change it, you have to advocate for a constitutional convention, advocate for your changes, and then the states have to ratify it. See, they would do this by revolution, but it doesn't work. The United States people, the American people, are not that type of people. And this is what Woodrow Wilson discovered and the progressives discovered. You can't have your communist ideal through revolution in America. You have to do it by subverting the system and changing it from within. They've been pushing toward pure democracy ever since Woodrow Wilson's time. And Teddy Roosevelt's caught up in this too, folks. And now what they want to do is get rid of the Senate. And they want to subserviate or pack the court. They're using the courts to alter the Constitution through interpretation. None of this is constitutionally legal. It's not the way it was set up. Say, well, Joe, that's just your opinion. No, that's what the Federalist and Anti-Federalist hammered out. That's what they said. Deltros, what site is this article from? Which one? The one we're watching right now? Gateway Pundit, or the one that I was reading earlier? You got to give me a little more information than that, D. So what's going on here is the far left Democratic Socialists, and they're in the like right here, new DSA policy platforms, source material with the Democratic Socialists of America. This is straight out of Woodrow Wilson's plan. It is. This one here is Gateway Pundit. There we go. Just give me a second, folks. I'll throw the link in there for him. So this is straight out of Wilson's plan that we were just reading, his architectural plans. So they're saying that. But now here's another thing we have. How can you trust your election? Back when he was still doing good work, Glenn Beck was focusing on Soros, spooky dude. He doesn't focus on Soros all that much anymore. I wonder why. But he was explaining how Soros undermines republics by undermining the confidence in their elections first, and then using that to overthrow the country. And he perfected that method overseas. This is why he's wanted by several countries for messing with their countries who we have extradition treaties with, yet we will not extradite George Soros. Why? Well, here's what we have now. We finally have the evidence. After examining over 155,000 absentee envelopes, we've discovered over 26,000 absentee ballots were unlawfully counted in Detroit's 2020 election. It's not just Detroit, but this would have been enough back then at 2020 to potentially switch Michigan to Trump. These were close elections, and Detroit is where the election was thrown. And this is when the results for Detroit came in. That's where Steve Deace jumped up on their live broadcast and yelled they stole the election. It was late at night. And there's some more coordination here too. Remember, from the Eastern to the Western time zones, they shut all of these countings down all at the same time. Those 6 states that are in question, they shut down their counting all at the same time. How does that happen? And then when and at the time, Trump was leading in all of them. And when they come back, Biden had won in all of them. I'm sorry, that alone should have had people looking for this. But they've gone through this, and this article here is, again, Gateway Pundit. They've gone through the evidence, and here's some of the evidence that's an actual document from the city of Detroit. So the Gateway Pundit's been on this. These are just the mail-in ballots. There's some more of it. And these are actual vote counting documentation, shows you what happened. This is real investigative, not just journalism. This is criminal matters, folks. this article is damning for the state of Michigan. If nothing else, here's how this should have been handled. This should have been investigated because it would have been really easy. Before you certify the election, you had time to do this. The state of Michigan's electoral votes should not have counted, at the very least. Should not have counted. Why? The United States Constitution guarantees every state a Republican government, not Democratic government, a representative government. If I can show where a major district within that state is knowingly and willingly being allowed by the governor to cheat in an election, then the people of that state are not being properly represented on a whole. And because the federal government is a government that governs the states, not the people, despite what everybody thinks Lincoln did, the document was not changed. The understanding was not changed. Go back to it. Say, okay, we govern the states. You cannot count the electoral votes of a state that has been shown, demonstrated, is the governor, the leadership, is allowing fraudulent elections in their state. That would be a crime against the other 49 states. Mike Pence shirked his constitutional duty when he counted the votes of these 6 states. He should have been tried for treason. I don't give a rat's rip what anybody else says. That's the Constitution. That's what's in the definition of the words in the Constitution. That's simple logical extension of how this should be applied, how this should have happened. It didn't. So we've got the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, there's a lot more, folks. This is where I said that we're probably going to get ourselves a strike today. But you can go to the Gateway Pundit and track all of this stuff down. We've got more. Hold on. Hold on. When we come back from the break, I got more for you. 3 minutes. We'll see you then. We're back. So let's continue about some of what's been shown in recent years since 2020. This one I'm still not totally sure on. I know that there was a lot of problem going on in Georgia. But some of what's being recounted from Fulton County, supposedly there are 39,141 ballots with questionable authenticity. 3,930 were double scanned ballots, 6.8 million unsolicited absentee requests, thousands registered from UPS store, one church, and tiny locations. That right there is a violation of the law. 25,000 challenged and invalid voters proven on the rolls. And Biden's margin of victory was only 11,779 votes. We have video of them pulling ballots out in Fulton County after they closed down the election site, the counting polling places, and chased out all of the Republican watchers and started scanning ballots that were sitting underneath the table out of sight. That's on video. Now, they've explained that away as blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm sorry, but blah, blah, blah doesn't work for me in this case, especially since you can see in that video that these quote-unquote mailed-in ballots had never been folded. If you've ever gotten a mail-in ballot, they get folded. You should be able to bring that into a court of law and say, look, Your Honor, it's a mail-in ballot. Yes, you must count every ballot. No, I don't have to. This one was never folded. What's that got to do with anything? How did it go through the mail without ever getting folded? Oh, well, he used a flat rate envelope. They don't have to be folded. Yeah, but it comes folded. You receive it folded. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with Georgia, but I do know about this next thing. This is a picture from an article I'm going to share with you here in a minute. This is serious, but this, if you've been with us for a length of time, you might recognize the language. Vector 1, election record integrity. Vector 2, electronic voting system integrity. Vector, where do we go? 3, election results certification integrity. Vector 4, judicial malfeasance. Vector 5, information control. Vector 6, political bias funding streams. Vector 7, privatized election operations. Where did he go with Vector 8, seditious conspiracy? Vector 9, weaponization of government. Vector 10, foreign interference. Vectors, right? Folks, we did a show on vector analysis, or analyzing things in our world, especially our political world, through entropy and vector analysis. And Natasha has the link for that if you're interested. She'll put that up, and you go back and review that show. But essentially what I'm telling you is this is a case of, if any one little piece of this doesn't prove anything, but when you add all the vectors up, the hints, the blocks in the wall, it's an inductive argument. It's an inductive reasoning. It's circumstantial evidence. But in this case, it's not circumstantial. This comes from the Gateway Pundit. Massive election corruption report details 824 findings across 800 pages of search warrants and investigative documents. This is proper legal investigation, and they have come up with a ton of problems across these 10 vectors. Short conclusion is the United States electoral process can no longer be counted. Trust it. You can't count on it. We've got a problem. We've got a real problem on our hands. This takes years to develop and coordinate. And this is why nothing is getting done. Right here, you can go to the 799-page report titled An Attack Upon the U.S. Critical Infrastructure. The report's right here. You can download it. Matter of fact, I'll probably do that myself a little bit later on. Let me save that for later. But here's some of the documentation in this article that comes from the report. They're giving it to you here. So if President Trump wants to come along tonight and say, you know what, we've got a state of emergency, we are going to have our elections, but what we're going to do is you're going to need an ID, you're going to need to vote in person on a paper ballot that we can trace. And everybody's going to say, he's stealing the election. Really? How? And as soon as they go with this, well, people of color can't get an ID, just tell them, you know what? You're a racist. I don't want to listen to you. Because that's what they're doing. When they say that people of color are too stupid or not care enough or too lazy or whatever to go get an ID, what they're saying is one of two things. They're saying they're a racist, or they're saying, oops, Democratic Senator Elisa Slotkin says the quiet part out loud about the Save America Act. Without all those illegal colored people, we can't win an election. Well, Joe, she didn't say those words. Yes, she did. She said that unless you allow us to have elections without verified identity and a ballot that I can trace and count and keep track of, and then vote in person to make sure I can do this, unless you have a secured election, Democrats won't be able to win. That's what they're saying. And one of the things that the Save America Act would do is you have to be a citizen to vote. Well, that's a duh. Well, they want non-citizens who have no verification process to vote. In other words, bots are voting. People overseas are voting electronically. I'm not even going to the articles that have come out about Iran being involved or China being involved in our elections. I believe that, but I don't need that right now. I can focus entirely within the United States and tell you, you can't trust the electoral process anymore. And I'm not even done showing you what I've got to show you today. Comment on the board from Mr. Quest. There needs to be a way to use your social security number to log to see how your vote was actually registered. No, that's a violation of the Social Security Act of 35 and 37. Your social security number is not supposed to be used to identify anything. But, Mr. Quest, this is very easy to do. I don't know how you folks do it in your states, but in the state of Florida, you come into the election booth, you present your ID. They actually check your signature against the one on record for you. You know, they've got a facsimile of your signature, your address and everything. They know that, okay, you are registered in this party, et cetera, and they print you a ballot. They can, if they want to, print a code on that ballot specific to your ID that must be accessed only by a judicial court order to allow them to track that number. But you could track the ballot to the person if you want to do this.
That's not exactly correct.
Okay.
In the state of
You
Florida,
work for them.
You present. Yeah, I'm an election worker, so I know how this works. You present an ID, and there's a list of approved IDs, and one of the IDs have to have a picture, and one of them has to have a signature, because you can actually use two different IDs to vote in the state of Florida that are on the approved list. Or if it has a picture and a signature, you can use that. Usually people use their driver's license. That's what they use. And then what happens is we look at the picture, we verify that the picture matches the person standing in front of us. And then we go through and verify their information is correct in the database, make sure their address and everything is correct. Then they sign. We match the signature that they sign with to the ID that they provided. If those signatures match, then they are issued a ballot.
Okay.
That's how the process works. But
well,
anyway,
I was going off just what I've seen.
Yeah. But that's
now,
just technically, that's just how it works.
Here's how this would work, folks. You just generate a number for that ballot when you print it. And if that person is found to have voted in more than one precinct, you just pull those two ballots out of the account, throw them away.
Yeah. And the way it works.
Yes, I know somebody has been disenfranchised, but
you
have no way of proving who it was. That person who was disenfranchised, you're going to have to find out who voted the second time. But now it's more than likely, with the way Charlie just did this, more than likely it's going to be you trying to do that twice, because your
the database
face had to be on the ID.
As long as you're in Bay County, you can't vote twice, because the system won't let you, because it keeps track of when you're issued a ballot and when that ballot is counted. And then it shows you have voted, and it will not allow you to vote again. Now, there was an instance of somebody that voted in two counties and was actually caught and charged with voter fraud, because they went from Bay County to Washington County and voted in Bay County and voted in Washington County, and they got into some legal trouble over that. But anyway, there's that's just how things
But you
work
see
a
what
little
I'm
bit.
saying is if you had
Yeah.
that number, that would be able you
Oh
be able
yeah,
to find
yeah.
catch that.
Yep.
And the other thing is, folks, we report our elections very quickly in the state of Florida doing it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's a paper ballot that can physically be gone back and verified later on if need be.
Yep.
And
It's a fairly good system that they have
and
in Florida.
if I'm not mistaken, the counting machine, does that have USB ports where I can put a hard drive in it and mess with it and take the data off of it? I don't know if our counting machines do that here in the state of Florida.
I don't know if they have a USB on it, but it is computerized.
It is connected.
And it is,
yes.
And it is connected to the internet because it automatically sends the tally from each precinct to the election office.
But now, folks, we're talking about counting machines, not voting machines. All these machines do is count, and they're like your old scanner
and they
readers
all have,
when you were a kid.
And they all have paper ballots so that the canvassing board can validate each precinct's voting by going to the actual physical ballots and doing a hand count if necessary. And that does happen occasionally when there's a very tight election. They will actually hand count the ballots.
So the point here is this can be done, even if you had to hand count all these things. If you were getting issued a ballot, if you had election volunteers that were physically counting them as you handed them in, it would still get done on time. The idea that there are too many people, that's a lie. That is a lie being sold to you so that you will accept all of the crap they're doing to us. Heck, man, if it were me, I'd go back to making you stick your thumb in the indigo ink when you voted.
Yeah.
So, all right, you can stay put if you'd like, Charlie, but I'm going to take you all to another one. This is Joe Hoft. He's a blogger of a sort, but he's pretty darn good investigator and journalist as well. This is a 3-part section. And I only gave Natasha the link for part 1. Once you're there, all you got to do is search for this title and it'll bring up all 3 parts. But this one, the 2020 election steal, was built before COVID. And this one talks about how Zuckerberg money and Alex Padilla's election model and the Sacramento County paper trail talks about how the money came in to set up the physical structure for these mail-in ballots and everything. This focuses just on the state of California, but this was done all over the country. So this is a good piece of investigative work. You got that one. Part 2, this focuses on the how there was a warning beforehand with the way they were collecting data. So this follow-up article in part 2, it's a public record subpoena roadmap piece. And they're saying it doesn't claim that this proves election fraud, but it shows you the vectors. Okay. And it shows you how public records of the people registered to vote and everything, the DHS and all this stuff was reviewing this. It shows you how the records were used in this system. And then on this one, part 3, that's not what I wanted. Part 3, the steal was built before. It deals with how nobody was allowed to. There's 2 and 3 right here, but it's dealing with how nobody was allowed to check up on all of this. There was let me do this in a just a boom 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 for you. What happened is they did all this investigative work. This isn't journalists. This is also journalists following behind investigatory agencies, government agencies. So they find all this money that was dumped in there by Zuckerberg and other people, and they bought the drop boxes and they set up the mailing system and everything. This was done before 2020, before the election. And then they gathered up a whole bunch of data on who was and wasn't registered to vote using your voter rolls and your Department of Motor Vehicle, everything. And we don't know what that was done for, but it was done in connection with these nonprofit groups that were doing all the voting. And then that was caught. This was seen before 2020, before the elections. There was a grand jury in California that said, hey, you need to look into all of this. There's a problem here. And the election commission in the state of California ignored it. until after the election was over. So then when they go back and they looked into it, the investigators now are going back and looking into it. The election commission saying, hey, we did everything they told us to do, but they did it after the fact. And then there was one key piece to it that they didn't do. So they knew, and they're claiming, well, we didn't hear anything about this. There was no warning. That's not true. Grand jury handed things down in plenty of time to have looked at this. This was all, you got to go back and read it. This is the reason that the average citizen is not going to be able to follow all of this is long and convoluted. Go back to that article with the velocity vectors. We've got an attention span of a gnat nowadays. So if you want me to explain this to you, first of all, I got to teach you attention span. Second of all, I got to teach you velocity vectors and complicated, methodology. It's not going to work. So the authorities got to do this, and they got to force this, and they're not going to do it either. And lo and behold, I found something else through Joe Hoff. How about this one, Charlie? Bombshell exclusive. Nationwide cellular network connects election equipment and gives federal government access to election systems at the precinct level. Oh, nothing will go wrong with that, will it? Folks, the federal government shouldn't have access to your voting system at the precinct. That's not the way the system was supposed to work. That's not the way it's designed to work. So what you have here is prima facie evidence that the people who want to destroy the system the way it was originally created and constructed and set up to work are succeeding. And it doesn't matter who you elect. As long as they get caught up in a system, you could elect Sister Teresa. And she'll go up there with all the good intentions in the world, and you'll say, here's how the system works. And she'll go to work within the system to try and do it right, never realizing that the system itself is illegal. So this is how you can corrupt good people. The only people that you could elect to fix these things now are the people who have taken the time to read the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the notes on the Convention, the notes on the writing of the Bill of Rights, and read the notes from the congressional records from every one of the amendments that's been since then. You'd have to have somebody who understands the true history of what this country was supposed to be and what the founders were trying to do. That's the only people you can elect, and then nobody's going to support them. Because it's entirely opposite of, we want our bread and circuses. The idea that, well, I got to elect somebody who's going to bring down inflation and make it easier and cheaper to live, that's not government's job. That's supposed to be the job of the free market. But because we've allowed corporations that keep buying up we've allowed monopolies. Well, no, Joe, there's always, you got Lowe's and Home Depot there. See, no monopolies. Want to bet? That's how the media works. When I can get 6 men in a room and I now have 90+% of all media in the country in that room with those 6 people, that's a monopoly. No, Joe, it isn't. Monopoly says one company owns everything. Not when they all get together and collude. And if you think they don't do that, you haven't paid attention to corporations well enough lately, or the history of corporations, or how they work, and how the government is writing laws that allows them to collude. That's what TARP was all about, only it was the government doing the colluding. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was John Adams who once made a comment that one of the biggest problems, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember it word for word, but he was saying that one of the biggest problems we have is the total ignorance of money and how money works in our general population. Cue Jimmy Zinker, the meaning of money. I got that. I heard that in my voice right in my head. I hear him going, ooh, 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 Mr. Kata. He's ready to go. The meaning of money speech out of Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged. Yes, we did a show on that. We've listened to that speech, but it's more than that. People don't understand how money works or used to work. And when we took ourselves off of the gold standard and we put ourselves onto the petrodollar standard, Now you understand why oil prices work the way they work. Oil's more expensive than it should be. It is. Why? Well, in part, yes, Rockefeller, yep, the oil tycoons. But when we were put on the petrodollar, and just go read Carol Quigley, Tragedy and Hope. You'll understand what that's all about. Yeah, big book, take you forever to get through it. Boring as all snot, but it's going to read like prophecy now, because he was just telling you what these people are doing. And essentially he's saying, hey, here's the deep state that Wilson started. Here it is. It's functioning. And now we're in an age where it's coming to fruition, culmination. So the petrodollar is the only thing that keeps the world's economy still working. And it's still pegged to the US dollar. But if you allowed oil to assume its natural price through open market, the petrodollar would collapse and the whole world would collapse. It's the same thing with diamonds. Diamonds are abundant. They're everywhere. They should be cheap as a zirconian. Zirconians should be dirt cheap, man. I mean, that was made in a lab. Why are you charging the money for them that you charge? That's just a piece of charcoal that you went. Okay, well, diamonds are everywhere. And the reason they keep their value up is because they're tightly controlled to artificially make them rare. So if we were to somehow or another find a way to go back to the gold standard, silver, copper, gold, et cetera, then your money would be worth what the silver, copper, or gold is worth at that point in time. So if you were old enough, you can remember the debates back when Ron Paul was running. He held up a dime and he said, if we still had good money, my dime would buy me a gallon of milk, or in a loaf of bread, a gallon of gas, or whatever. And everybody laughed at him. Folks, the silver in that dime that day he said that was worth $3.36 if it had still been made out of silver at that time.
He was actually holding up a pre-1964 dime, so it was worth that.
So he did. Yes. So it was worth that.
He was holding an actual silver dime.
So he could have gotten his gallon of milk, or his loaf of bread, or his gallon of gas. Yes. And everybody laughed at him because they're ignorant. They're ignorant how money works. We don't teach. Our schools have been our schools need to be just shut down, just destroyed. The public education system immediately needs to be revamped. That's an emergency. That is a 5-alarm. Natasha should just hit the dadgum dumpster fire button until it breaks over this. Our education system is actually subversive to this nation. It's being used as a means of destroying the country, and we're funding it. Now, true to form with T-Rex, nothing I have discussed with you since I started talking about the election is a conspiracy theory. It's all true. It's all verifiable. It's all fact. It's all real. I don't know all the players. I don't know what their ultimate goal is, but I do know that they are rigging elections. They've been doing it since at least 2012. Well, actually, no. Nixon didn't lose to JFK. They've been doing it since then. We now know that election was rigged and thrown in Chicago. That's where Nixon lost to JFK, in Chicago. And we now know that was a fraudulent election. But you got to do a couple of things here, folks. You've got to secure the election, and then you have to undo the damage that was done by the Manchurian candidates. You got to go back and undo everything they did. You can never allow an illegal act to stand. A criminal should never profit from their crime. If we allow these elections to stand, it's the same thing as this. Well, he robbed the bank. We caught him a couple days later, but oh well, it's already over with. He robbed the bank. We didn't catch him in the process. So what are you going to do about it? All right, dude, take off. Go on. Keep your money. So guess what he's going to do tomorrow? He's going to rob another bank. And another, and another, and another. I want to illustrate absurdity with being really absurd. I'm going to get vulgar with you. Oh yeah, well, he raped 50 women. Who cares? We didn't catch him in the act, so it's already done. What do we care? You have to go back and correct the action. Say, well, you can't correct a rape. Well, you can put him in jail and punish him for it. I can correct a theft. I can correct an injustice. Well, it's easy. Everything that was passed that Joe Biden signed is null and void. All of it. And then go back and, I'm sorry, make Obama prove that he is actually a natural born citizen as the founders understood that term. And I don't think you're going to be able to do that. In which case, you got a lot of crap to undo. We've made ourselves a mess. First thing you have to do is stop. This is triage the way they taught me in the military. Start the breathing, stop the bleeding, treat for shock. This nation isn't breathing. We got to start breathing liberty again. We've got to teach liberty again. And the reason they say, I don't care how much blood is gushing out of your body. If you're not breathing, you'll die quicker from lack of oxygen. So they taught us, start the breathing, stop the bleeding. So we've got to start breathing liberty and then stop all of this lawlessness in place. Start correcting it. Treat for shock. Treat for shock. I would liken that to go back and fix things. Actually fix them. Take ground back. You're not going to do that through regular elections. Why? You've got a party system. Your party system is essentially that you're one party. What you essentially have is two nations. You have a Democratic nation and a Republican nation. Now, I believe they're the same. I believe it's one party control. But if you take it as two parties, what you've established is two feudal systems. And that's what they are. They're feudal. The head of the RNC and the head of DNC is the king at any given time. And then everybody else underneath them. And yeah, I mean, even above the president or the elected officials or whatever, because they have more power. They can keep you from getting elected. They can keep you from even getting on the ballot, unless you're independently wealthy. So you have two feudal systems that are fighting each other. And they never, ever allow anybody on that ballot that they don't control in some way, shape, form, or another. And if you think Trump isn't controlled, why has he started all of a sudden supporting all of these rhinos that have been at his throat for the last 12 years? He is. Look at all the kind words about Lindsey Graham. No, folks. It's not a conspiracy. Just nobody wants to acknowledge what they're seeing. Anything to say, Charlie? Told you it'd be a lousy show.
Yeah. I'm surprised we're still streaming on YouTube and Facebook. So
I kept my promise.
But don't be surprised if this show gets taken down from YouTube. They've been doing that to many of our shows. So archives will be available on Rumble. So and archive.org. We're working through that. The AI is getting all of our shows back to the very, very beginning, and won't be too long, and we'll have all of the shows up and available, and hopefully we'll be updating some playlists and stuff along the way to help you guys. So anyway,
some of these older shows that we've done, we've only been on the air for 4 years, but some of these older shows are already turning into prophecy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get out of here. We thank you folks for joining us. I know that I don't even know why you're here. I really don't. I honestly don't. We were talking about that before the show, but you're loyal. We appreciate that. Thank you. Hey, it's good to see you, Water Jug, if you're still with us. I noticed you there. I just didn't say anything. I was running my gator at the moment, but some old friends popping in today. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button for us. Share the show. If you haven't already done so, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you can see anything that we do that's non-scheduled. Otherwise, tomorrow we're back in the Scepter and the Birthright. We'll continue with that. Monday, oh boy, I got a manic Monday, all right. More of the same. More reasons to hate our government. So, until we see you again, y'all stay safe. Take care. We love you. Bye-bye.